Matthew scrutinized the divorce papers and smirked. Really, Lisa? You think you'll make it on your own? Without me, you're nothing. His words stung, but I wouldn't let him see it. I kept my expression firm, biting back the retort on the tip of my tongue. Instead, I took a deep breath and assessed the living room. It was a typical suburban home in a mid-sized American city. Everything was incredibly well organized, a stark contrast to Matthew's perpetual messiness. I broke the silence. We'll see about that. Matthew laughed, tossing the papers onto the coffee table. You've never been on your own? You think you can just leave? I'm not thinking, Matthew. I'm doing it. He shrugged, picking up his phone and scrolling through it lazily. Go ahead. You'll come crawling back when you realize you can't handle it. Ignoring him, I moved to the kitchen, the one safe space left in the house. Memories of happier times cluttered my mind every time I stepped through the door. The kitchen was like a parallel universe compared to Matthew's chaos, the harmony amid discord. As I filled the kettle, I heard the low murmur of Matthew's voice from the living room. Curiosity got the better of me, and I tiptoed to the doorway. Yeah, she's finally taking the bait, Matthew said, his voice muffled as he spoke into the phone. Really thought she was something, but she's about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. Can't even keep up with the simplest tasks. My stomach churned. The person I had spent years supporting, laughing with, and loving was selling me short to his friends like I was some joke. Determined to keep my emotions in check, I focused on pouring the hot water over my tea bag, watching the steam curl upward. Matthew's voice grew louder. She thinks she's got this big plan to leave me and start fresh. Honestly, it's pathetic. Once a quitter, always a quitter. The words cut through me, each one a tiny jab that threatened to bring tears to my eyes. I held my breath, willing myself not to cry. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I returned to the living room, teacup in hand. You done making your little jokes? Matthew hung up the phone, not even bothering to disguise his irritation. Were you eavesdropping? I didn't need to eavesdrop to know what you think of me. He shrugged. You're oversensitive. It's just harmless banter. Harmless? I echoed. You're belittling me to your friends. They know the truth about you. Maybe you should start accepting it, too. He grabbed his jacket and headed toward the door. I'm going out. Don't wait up. The door closed with a finality that echoed in our strangely silent house. I watched him leave, each step he took away opening a small window of relief in my chest. When the headlights of his car vanished down the street, I exhaled deeply, sipping my now lukewarm tea. This was my test, my chance to prove him wrong. For too long, I'd allowed Matthew to dictate the terms of my life, convincing myself I was nothing without him. But now, it's time to be something more. I walked to the living room, grabbed the divorce papers, and sat at the desk with a pen in hand. I felt a surge of determination, this time different. This time, it was real. I signed my name with purpose, each stroke of the pen a declaration of independence. I'm not nothing, Matthew. I'm just beginning. I stared at the signature on the divorce papers, feeling a strange mix of resolve and uncertainty, but there was no turning back now. As I moved the papers aside, memories of our early days flooded back, uninvited. Matthew and I met at work. He was charismatic, effortlessly charming everyone around him. I was drawn to that magnetism, almost helplessly. Our romance was whirlwind, filled with grand gestures and sweet promises. Early on, we were inseparable. I left my job to support his career, convinced by his words and my own naive belief that it was for the best. Helping Matthew at work started small. A few emails here, a report there. Soon I was practically running his department from behind the scenes. He'd prop up the image while I managed the reality. Our professional dynamics evolved, except it wasn't evolution, it was exploitation. I recalled a recent conversation with one of his old coworkers, Cam. We ran into each other at a grocery store. Hey, Lisa. Long time no see, Cam greeted, throwing some vegetables into his cart. What have you been up to these days? I forced a smile. Oh, still helping Matthew with his work. You know how it is. Cam's eye roll was slight but noticeable. Yeah, everyone knows how it is with Matthew. The guy's a legend in his own mind. I frowned. What do you mean? He's always talking about how he runs the show. Calls himself a genius, but we all know who's really doing the work. I forced a laugh. Oh, you know Matthew. Always boasting. Cam leaned in, whispering conspiratorially. Actually, some folks say he takes credit for your work. Heard it more than once around the office. The conversation stayed with me, gnawing at my sense of loyalty and justice. Over time, Matthew's reliance on me didn't breed gratitude but contempt. He treated me like his personal assistant, his condescending attitude growing more frequent. Each task I handled, every problem I solved, felt like another nail in the coffin of our supposed partnership. Days after that grocery store encounter, I was at Matthew's office, dropping off some paperwork he had conveniently forgotten. As I waited, I overheard snippets of a hushed conversation between two of his colleagues in the break room. "You hear about Matthew's latest screw-up?" one asked, chuckling. "Which one? Seems like there's a new one every week." "Guy's useless without Lisa," the other replied. My blood boiled, but I walked away quickly, pretending I hadn't heard. Pretending had seemed easier back then. Sitting now in my quiet kitchen, I realized just how deeply the facade went, how much I had buried to keep the peace. I could no longer ignore the extent of Matthew's disrespect. He had built his success on my efforts and derided me behind my back. I picked up my phone and dialed Rebecca, my lawyer and longtime friend. Her voice was a lifeline. "Rebecca, it's time," I said, my voice steady. "All right, Lisa. I'll start the paperwork. We'll get this done." Clicking off, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Empowerment. The next step in my journey was clear. This was just the beginning, and Matthew had no idea what was coming. I folded the last of the laundry and heard the front door slam. Matthew was home early, which was never a good sign. He stormed into the living room, his face flushed with anger. "Lisa," he barked, "get in here." I walked in, my hands still slightly damp from the laundry. "What's wrong?" He held up his phone, shoving it in my face. "Why did someone tell me you were snooping around at my office?" I took a step back. "I wasn't snooping, Matthew. I went to drop off those papers like you asked." "Yeah. And what else did you do? Gossip with my coworkers? Try to undermine me?" I leveled my gaze at him. "Undermine you? You don't need my help for that." He glared at me, his eyes darkening. "Watch it, Lisa. I can ruin you." "I've already signed the divorce papers, Matthew. You think you can still scare me?" He threw his hands up in the air. "Papers mean nothing. You'll crawl back when you realize you can't handle life without me." The doorbell rang, breaking the tense silence. I opened the door to find Cam standing there, looking uncomfortable. "Hey, Lisa, can I talk to you for a second?" "Sure, Cam. What's up?" Cam glanced past me at Matthew, who was still fuming. "I think you should know something. Matthew's been talking a lot of trash about you at work." Matthew scoffed from the couch. "Oh, here we go." Ignoring Matthew, Cam continued. "He says you're incompetent, that you can't handle anything on your own." My heart pounded. I know he's been bad-mouthing me. I've heard it before. Cam shifted uneasily. "It's worse than that. Matthew's been flirting with Karen Blake. More than flirting, actually." I looked at Matthew, who was trying and failing to act nonchalant. "Karen? Really, Matthew?" "What?" he said, feigning innocence. "She's just a friend." "Yeah, a friend. A friend who sends you heart emojis and late-night texts." I shot back, my voice rising. Matthew's eyes narrowed. "Don't pretend to be the victim here. You're overreacting. Karen's harmless." Cam stepped in. "Actually, I saw them together. They looked pretty cozy during that business dinner last week." I turned to Matthew. "Care to explain?" He rolled his eyes. "It was a business dinner. Get over it." I couldn't believe him. My mind raced, piecing together the lies, the disrespect, the sheer arrogance. I needed proof, and I needed it fast. "I'm done, Matthew. This marriage is over, and you know it." He smirked. "Good luck. You'll never manage without me." I stared at him, the man I'd devoted years of my life to, and felt only cold resolve. We'll see about that. As he stormed out, I thanked Cam for confirming what I already suspected. Knowing Matthew's true colors gave me the fuel I needed. I started gathering evidence, documenting everything. His texts, his meetings, even looking through his finances. I had pictures of him and Karen at various outings. His secrets were unraveling, and with each new piece of information, I realized how little I actually knew Matthew. But it wasn't just about exposing his infidelity. It was about taking back control. I called Rebecca again, sharing my discoveries. She listened, understanding the full weight of what I had uncovered. "We'll use this, Lisa," she assured me. "This will solidify your case." I hung up, feeling a strange sense of calm. This was no longer about just leaving. This was about getting my life back from a man who had taken too much from me. As I put away my phone, I promised myself that Matthew's reign of manipulation would end, one way or another. I sat at my desk, the cold blue glow of my laptop screen lighting up the documents and pictures scattered around me. Each piece of evidence felt like a step closer to reclaiming my life. Matthew's texts, financial records, and photos with Karen all painted a clear picture. He had underestimated me, and that was about to be his downfall. Rebecca met me the next day at a quiet cafe. I spread the documents out on the table between us. "This is solid," she said, flipping through the evidence. "Matthew really let his guard down. He thinks I'm still that naive woman he married," I replied, my voice steady. Rebecca smiled. "But you're so much more than that now. This will help us build a strong case for your divorce." We spent the next hour strategizing, discussing how to use this evidence to counteract any claims Matthew might make. The plan was coming together, and I felt more confident by the minute. Back home, I knew the next step was to hit Matthew where it hurt. His job. I accessed the company's systems, leveraging my knowledge from years of running things behind the scenes. I started small, ensuring vital information was missing or incorrect. It wouldn't be traceable back to me, but the effects would be noticeable. Days later, Matthew came home, visibly agitated. "Work was a nightmare today," he grumbled, throwing his jacket onto the couch. "Really?" I asked innocently. "What happened? Some crucial data went missing. Then we discovered a bunch of errors in the reports. It's chaos." I nodded, suppressing a smile. "Sounds tough." "You have no idea," he said, rubbing his temples. "And I'm the one who's going to take the fall if this isn't fixed." That night, I continued to sabotage his work, planting seeds for more chaos. The next week, he came home fuming. "Lisa, everything's falling apart." He paced the living room, panic clearly etched on his face. "Every time we fix one problem, 2 more pop up." "Strange," I replied, barely containing my satisfaction. "Maybe you should look at your team's performance." Deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before his incompetence would be exposed. I just had to keep pushing. One evening, as Matthew was out, I sat down with Rebecca to finalize my plans. The divorce papers were one thing, but we needed the perfect timing to ensure everything would collapse simultaneously. "Focus on the next big project he's handling," Rebecca advised. "If we can create enough disruption there, the fallout will be catastrophic for him." I nodded, understanding the significance. This was more than revenge. This was my liberation. I'll make it happen. The big project was a merger deal Matthew had been bragging about for weeks. I accessed critical documents and altered key details, ensuring he wouldn't notice until it was too late. As the deadline approached, Matthew's panic grew. The night before the final presentation, he was frantically reviewing his notes. "Why isn't any of this making sense?" he muttered, eyes darting over the papers. I watched him with a calm, detached demeanor. "You're probably just tired," I offered. "Maybe sleep on it." "Sleep with this mess?" He stomped off to his study, leaving me alone in the living room. Early the next morning, Rebecca texted me. "Ready?" I replied. "More than ready." I took the divorce papers from the drawer, just every line of ink a testament to my resolve. Today, Matthew's world would crumble, and I would be there to watch it fall, stronger and freer than I'd been in years. This was my turn to rise. The morning light filtered through the blinds as I sipped my coffee, awaiting the inevitable fallout at Matthew's office. The merger deal was set to be finalized today, and I knew the errors I'd planted would come to light like a ticking time bomb. Around midday, my phone buzzed. It was Rebecca. "It's happening. I just got word from a friend at the company. The project's blown up in his face." I felt a surge of satisfaction. Perfect. I'll be ready. An hour later, Matthew burst through the door, his face a mask of fury and desperation. "Everything's gone to hell," he spat, flinging his briefcase against the wall. "The merger is dead. Dead! They're blaming me for the failures." I raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "What do you mean?" "What do I mean?" He shouted, pacing like a caged animal. "We lost crucial files. The figures were all wrong. They think I sabotaged it." "Maybe you should have double-checked everything," I said calmly. "It's your responsibility, isn't it?" He whipped around, eyes blazing. "You don't understand, Lisa. This could ruin me." I met his gaze, unflinching. Maybe you should have thought about that before treating everyone, including me, like they're beneath you. His anger shifted to a sneer. You think you're so special? Signing those divorce papers doesn't make you independent. You'll come crawling back, mark my words. I stood up, walking over to the desk and picking up the divorce papers. Actually, Matthew, I brought them for you to sign. Given your current predicament, I'd say the timing is perfect. He laughed bitterly. You think these papers mean anything? You're nothing without me. We'll see about that. I placed the papers firmly in front of him. Sign them, Matthew. He grabbed a pen, his hand shaking with rage, and scrawled his name angrily across the bottom. I gathered the papers, feeling an overwhelming sense of triumph. At that moment, his phone buzzed incessantly with calls. He ignored it, glaring at me instead. You think this is over? You'll regret this. Mark my words. I stayed silent, my resolve unshaken. He stormed out, leaving the house in turmoil, his world crumbling around him. That night, I sat quietly in the living room, absorbing the moment. The weight on my shoulders felt lighter. The next steps were clear. I needed to finalize the divorce and reclaim my life in full. A few days later, the news broke at Matthew's company. He was publicly reprimanded, demoted from his high-ranking position. The scandal of the botched merger rippled through the company, leaving his reputation in tatters. Matthew's calls grew desperate, but I ignored them. Finally, he appeared at the door again, a shadow of his former self. Lisa, this is all a misunderstanding. We can fix this. You and me, like old times. I looked at him, seeing the man who once held me captive under his thumb, now reduced to pleading. There are no old times, Matthew, only what's next. And for me, that doesn't include you. As he stood there, dumbfounded, I closed the door on him, and that part of my life, for good. This was the end of Matthew's reign over me, but just the beginning of my true independence. I had torn down the walls of my old life and was finally stepping into my own, no longer confined by his manipulations. The future was mine, built on my terms. The news of Matthew's public demotion spread like wildfire. His once admired reputation crumbled, and the fallout from the botched merger left him ostracized at work. I could almost hear the collective sigh of relief from his coworkers. A week later, I walked into the office of David Walsh, my former boss. He greeted me with a warm smile, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Lisa, it's been too long. Sit down, let's catch up. I took a seat, feeling the weight of the past weeks lift slightly. Thanks for seeing me, David. Are you kidding? We've missed you around here, he said, leaning back in his chair. I heard about what happened with Matthew. How are you holding up? I'm doing better, actually. It's been tough, but it's also been a wake-up call. I'm ready to get back into the workforce. David nodded, his expression serious. Matthew never appreciated what he had in you, Lisa. You were always the backbone, and it's about time you got the recognition you deserve. Thank you, David. I have a lot to offer, and I'm ready to prove it. Good, he said, leaning forward. How would you feel about coming back on board? We need someone with your skills and experience. My heart leapt. I'd love that. I'm more than ready. As we discussed the details, a sense of liberation washed over me. This was the turning point I had been waiting for, a chance to rebuild not only my career, but my entire life. Back home, I started job hunting in earnest, sending out resumes and setting up interviews. I reconnected with former colleagues, each conversation a reminder of my capabilities and talents. The process was invigorating, a stark contrast to the stifling environment I had endured with Matthew. Meanwhile, Matthew's desperation grew. He called repeatedly, each message more frantic than the last. Lisa, please call me back. We need to talk. I can fix this. I ignored him, focusing on my own path. One evening, as I prepared for an interview, Matthew showed up at the door again, looking haggard. Lisa, you have to help me, he pleaded. I crossed my arms, standing firm. Help you? After everything you've done? You don't understand. They're transferring me to a dead-end position. My career is over. I felt a flicker of pity, but quickly smothered it. That's your problem, not mine. You made your bed, Matthews. Now you have to lie in it. His face twisted in anger. You'll regret this, Lisa. You think you're better off without me, but you'll see. You'll come crawling back. I shook my head, closing the door on his threats. Goodbye, Matthew. The next weeks flew by. I landed a prestigious role at a new company, my skills and resilience impressing my new boss. The sense of accomplishment was exhilarating, each day a reminder that I was capable and deserving of success. Matthew, on the other hand, continued to spiral downward. The transfer to a trivial position sealed his professional downfall, and his reputation was beyond repair. He tried to take legal action, desperate to hold on to the last shreds of his former life, but Rebecca and I were prepared. We had the evidence, the paperwork, and the resolve to see it through. In our final confrontation, he attempted to get Lisa back through legal means, but I revealed all the documentation. "You're finished, Matthew," I said with a calm finality. "I've moved on. It's time you do the same." With each passing day, I felt stronger, vindicated. I had not only reclaimed my career, but my sense of self. Matthew's downfall was complete, a testament to his own deceit and arrogance. As I flourished in my new role, his life continued to unravel. This was my victory, my liberation, and as I moved forward, I knew the future was mine to shape, free from the shadows of the past. I was on my way home from work, feeling blissfully tired after a fulfilling day at my new job, when I received a call from Rebecca. "Lisa, we've got a problem. Matthew is trying to contest the divorce. He's claiming you manipulated him into signing the papers." I pulled into my driveway, gripping the steering wheel. "He's desperate, Rekka. Are we prepared to handle this?" "Absolutely, but it means another court date. He's not letting go easily." "All right," I said, my voice steady. "I'll be ready." The court date arrived quicker than I expected. Matthew looked haggard, but his eyes were filled with defiance as he sat across from me. His lawyer stood up first, spouting allegations that made my blood boil. Miss Hartman exploited Mr. Hartman's emotional state, coercing him into signing the divorce papers, the lawyer declared, pointing at me with undue dramatics. I whispered to Rebecca, "This is nonsense." Rebecca nodded. "Let me handle this." She stood, her voice level but firm. "Your Honor, we have ample evidence that Mr. Hartman willingly signed the divorce papers with full understanding. Moreover, we have documentation proving his ulterior motives and abusive behavior throughout the marriage." Matthew scoffed. "She's lying. I was under immense pressure. None of this is fair." The judge eyed Matthew skeptically. "Mr. Hartman, your claims lack substantial evidence. Based on the provided documents and testimonies, it's clear that Miss Hartman has grounds for divorce." I watched as the realization hit him. His face twisted in anger. "You'll regret this, Lisa. Mark my words. This isn't over." I stood my ground, meeting his gaze with unwavering determination. "Actually, it is over, Matthew." The judge finalized the divorce, and I walked out of the courtroom feeling lighter. The weight of our toxic marriage finally lifted from my shoulders. A few weeks after the court ruling, I learned that Matthew had been transferred to a menial position in a remote office. His life had unraveled completely, a stark contrast to his former arrogance. One evening, as I reviewed files for a big project, my phone rang. It was David. "Lisa, I have some great news. We're promoting you to lead the new strategic planning division. Your work has been outstanding." I could hardly contain my excitement. "Thank you, David. I won't let you down." "I know you won't," he replied warmly. "Congratulations, Lisa. You've earned this." My career was thriving, and my life was finally coming together. That night, I celebrated with close friends, toasting to new beginnings and the strength to overcome past struggles. Meanwhile, Matthew's life continued its downward spiral. His arrogance had led to his downfall, and there was no one left to clean up his messes. He was left to face the consequences of his actions alone. As I looked around at my friends, I felt a deep sense of gratitude and triumph. I had reclaimed my life, my career, and my dignity. The shadow of Matthew's toxic presence had faded, replaced by the bright possibilities of the future. The final showdown with Matthew was over, and I had emerged stronger and more resilient than ever. The path ahead was mine to walk, free from manipulation and deceit. For the first time in years, I felt a profound sense of peace. The drama, the revenge, and the struggle had all led me to this moment, and I was ready to embrace every opportunity that came my way, confident in who I had become. I spent the next weeks settling into my new role, thus flourishing in a supportive environment that valued my contributions. Life was finally coming together. One Saturday morning, I was tidying up when the doorbell rang. Answering it, I was surprised to find Matthew's mother, Eleanor, and his sister, Nancy, standing there, looking somber. "Lisa, we need to talk," Eleanor said with an edge in her voice. I stepped aside, motioning them into the living room. Come in. Once seated, Eleanor wasted no time. How could you do this to Matthew? He's family. You're tearing us apart. Nancy chimed in, her tone accusatory. You abandoned him when he needed you the most. What kind of person does that? I took a deep breath, steadying myself. You both have no idea what I went through. Matthew's lies, his manipulations, and his affairs were too much to bear. Eleanor's face hardened. He's your husband. You made vows to stand by him. I held her gaze, and he broke those vows repeatedly. Why should I stay with a man who treats me like I'm nothing? Nancy crossed her arms. We've known Matthew longer than you, Lisa. He needs love and support, not betrayal. Support, I laughed bitterly, like how he supported me by belittling my efforts and taking credit for my work. Eleanor looked taken aback, but she wasn't giving up. People make mistakes. Families forgive. There's a limit, Eleanor, I said firmly. Matthew's arrogance and deceit are his downfall, not my doing. Nancy finally dropped her confrontational stance, seeming to remember who I was to Matthew once, before everything fell apart. What happened, Lisa? He wasn't always this way. I sighed, feeling a mix of old pains and new strength. No, he wasn't. But power corrupted him, and he lost sight of what we had. I couldn't save him from himself. Eleanor's face softened slightly. We didn't know it was that bad. But you must understand, he's still our family. I understand, I replied, caught, my voice softer but resolved. But I had to choose my well-being over his dysfunction. I hope you can, too. The room fell silent. Eleanor and Nancy exchanged looks, but said nothing more. They got up to leave, Eleanor pausing at the door. We'll always care about you, Lisa, but this is hard for us to accept. I know, I said, holding back a wave of complex emotions. And I appreciate that, but I had to do what was right for me. As they left, I felt a sense of closure. The confrontation had opened old wounds, but it confirmed my choices. I returned to my desk, looking at the projects awaiting me. My life was moving forward, and I could feel its pace quickening in ways that excited rather than overwhelmed me. Reflecting on my journey, I recognized my transformation. From a supportive wife lost in her husband's shadow, I had become an independent individual charting her own path. I had faced manipulation, deceit, and familial conflict, and had come out stronger on the other side. With a deep breath, I tidied up the remaining reminders of my past, consigning them to a box that would be stored away. My future was now full of potential, unclouded by the failures and betrayals that once held me back. I smiled, feeling a wave of contentment wash over me. The final ties to my past were cut. The world awaited, and I was ready to embrace it with open arms. This was my new beginning, built on my terms. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a genuine sense of peace and purpose.
Pregnancy is not a sickness, so get to work.
I'm sorry, but my stomach is bloated. Can I do it later?
You're stable now, right? Start cleaning, you slug. Mom? Oh, Henry, Mariton wants to clean up so badly. I was just telling her to take care of herself.
The video played had a clear sound. It captured the exact moment of the wife bullying I suffered from, and also the moment she acted as a good mother-in-law to her son. I told you Grandma is a liar. We were surrounded by the confused voices of relatives and friends of my husband and I. My name is Madison Smith. I'm a 34-year-old housewife. My family consists of my husband Henry, who is 1 year older than me, and my 80-year-old daughter Caitlin. Also, I'm currently 8 months pregnant. The doctor says it's probably a boy. Our 2 children are rather far apart in age. This was because I remember having a hard time with my first baby. Though I had been avoiding it, my husband and his side of the family was eager to have another baby. Thankfully, their desire became a reality, and so I have a baby in my belly now. I have forgotten all the trouble of the first pregnancy because of the happiness of expecting our second child or not. What is troubling me is my husband's mother, my mother-in-law. I can't go home very often to my parents because I'd have to fly there. Therefore, When I had my first baby, we relied on Henry's parents. But my mother-in-law gave me a bunch of housework to do to have Caitlin to herself. A newborn baby should naturally stay with his or her mother all the time. After giving birth, the mother breastfeeds her child while waiting for her own body to recover. I think many mothers concentrate on just eating and sleeping, when not breastfeeding to allow their bodies to recover. I thought that I could rely on my mother-in-law for a month or so while I do that. But in reality, my mother-in-law would say,
"You're my son's wife, so you should be the one working your fingers to the bone. Mommy is busy now, so come here to Grandma."
She took my newborn daughter away from me and ordered me to do the housework. 6 days after giving birth, the day after I was discharged from the hospital, I was ordered to cook and clean the house. Instead of sleeping to recover, I was told to get up and work.
"Pregnancy and giving birth is not a sickness. I've gone through it without a problem."
I heard these words over and over again. When my daughter woke up and started to cry, I would have to undress and feed her with my father-in-law present. When I was done nursing, she would throw me away as if I had no more use for her. I was lucky that my father-in-law had the understanding to look away. I finished cleaning up here and there, then the toilet, then the shower. In the middle of cleaning the shower, I fainted and collapsed and was readmitted to the hospital. My father-in-law said the bathroom was red with my blood. It was my father-in-law who called the ambulance. For my husband's sake, I should mention that he was out for work. He was working frantically so that he could take his time off from the next day. The day after I was discharged from the hospital after giving birth, he had to go back again. The doctors gave me a scolding. I was overworked. I was anemic and dehydrated.
"Mommy is so unreliable. Collapsing like that, isn't she?"
I remember the look on my mother-in-law's face as she held my crying daughter in her arms, refusing to let go. My husband was also angry.
"Mom, you're too much. Have you really had a baby before?"
"I thought she was fine because I had gone through it before. Madison, you are so weak."
My father-in-law and my husband were appalled at my mother-in-law's lack of apology. Anyway, my husband told me that it was understandable for me to try to avoid another child because I had been through such an experience so soon after the birth. However, time has passed since that first birth. My daughter, who was a newborn then, is now 80 years old and has just entered 3rd grade. She was a precious child, already speaking at quite a young age, perhaps because she was a girl. My husband and daughter told me one day,
"You can ignore my parents. We'll do our best at home."
"I will take care of the baby too and help you."
This time, I will take a formal paternity leave, and you can just work on your recovery.
I had no choice but to do my best when I was told such a reliable and happy thing. So I kept the pregnancy a secret from my in-laws until I entered the 2nd trimester. I only vaguely told them what month the baby was due.
We could just let our parents know a while after the birth. But we should make sure to report your parents more often, since they're farther away.
The distance between our house and my in-laws' house is about an hour by car. One saving grace was that my mother-in-law didn't have a driver's license. Still, there were some unannounced visits. With the help of my husband, I was able to escape from my mother-in-law and safely grow the child in my body. Eventually, the due date approached. 2 nights before my due date, I started having contractions. I called the hospital and asked for instructions. They told me to come to the hospital to be admitted as the delivery may be accelerated for a woman who has given birth before. Looks like it started. Can I get a ride to the hospital?
Finally! Caitlin, let's drive Mom to the hospital together.
They dropped me off and I was admitted to the hospital to deliver our second baby. As is hospital policy nowadays, there was a rule that did not allow visitors until the time of discharge. I think it's a measure to protect expectant mothers and the babies. Now, I won't be able to see my family until I've safely delivered my baby. This made me feel stronger about my goal to safely deliver the baby and return home. I spent a lot of time on video calls with my husband until the contractions got worse. My daughter looked like an angel sleeping on my phone, and I couldn't help but take a picture of her. Later that night, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. In general, first-time mothers are allowed to leave the hospital about 5 days after delivery, and those experienced are allowed about 4 days after delivery. I had not given birth in 8 years and felt as if it was my first time, but I was allowed to leave the hospital after 4 days. I heard that the contraction of the uterus are stronger than after first birth, and I think it was more painful than in the past. Even so, the newborn baby was undeniably cute. When I left the hospital, I asked my husband, who was now on paternity leave, to pick me up. It was still before noon, so my daughter was at school. I can finally show you and Caitlin our new baby.
We have to celebrate when Caitlin gets home from school. I will get everything ready.
I never thought that this would be the last conversation I would have with my husband. It's been about 2 hours since the call. My husband had not yet arrived to pick me up. I was waiting at the hospital with my newborn son in my arms. I stared at my phone, wondering what was wrong, since I hadn't heard from him. Then, I received a call. It was from Heather, my husband's sister. I'm sorry to call you at such a busy time. Could you stay calm and listen? Henry was in a car accident and has just been rushed to the hospital. I don't remember how I got to the hospital after that. I think I took a cab with my son in my arms. When I arrived at the hospital, my sister-in-law was waiting for me at the entrance. She took me to a place that was neither a hospital room nor a treatment room, but what seems to be a mortuary. No way! It was like I was having a nightmare. Someone was lying there covered with a white cloth. No way! This can't be my husband.
How can you be so late even though you're his wife?
My mother-in-law's shrill voice snapped me back to reality.
It's your fault, Madison! It's all your fault!
I couldn't understand what was going on from my mother-in-law's emotional yelling, but my sister-in-law explained it to me. My husband had been in a car accident on his way to pick me up. He was driving his car when he collided head-on with a truck that had swerved into oncoming traffic. The truck driver may have fallen asleep at the wheel. Regular passenger car versus a large truck. There was no way he could win, and my husband passed on the spot. My sister-in-law, who had just lost her brother, told me while holding back her tears. One of the police officers knew my sister-in-law, and so she was contacted before I was. At a time like this, it must feel terrible. With your baby just born, please try to stay strong. My husband, Henry, was taken from us without him ever seeing his son. Our son doesn't even have a name yet. We were still deciding together. How am I going to explain this to Caitlin? My son in my arms started crying. I think he was hungry.
Shut up! Make him stop crying!
My mother-in-law shouted again. It's a terrible and absurd thing to tell a newborn baby to stop crying.
If you had a baby, You should have let us know. Such a wife with bad timing.
Nothing can be helped with those words. I couldn't take my husband home right away because he had died in an accident and needed to be autopsied. I waited 2 days and his body was taken directly to the funeral home. I was the chief mourner. My father-in-law accompanied me and helped with the funeral arrangements. My sister-in-law, who already had 3 children, helped take care of my son while I did that. My mother-in-law kept repeating like an incantation that my husband died because of me. Mom, don't say things like that to Madison when she's in the worst pain.
I'm the one who lost my precious child that I gave birth to while in pain.
My mother-in-law made a fuss about how she should be the chief mourner and how everything was my fault. She used to take away my newborn daughter, but now she doesn't seem to care about her grandson. I was so tired and sleepy at the wake, but I couldn't sleep now. I had to be a good mourner so that my husband wouldn't be worried when he'd leave us. I kept that in mind and stayed careful. I was the only person who could protect my children. I thought I was doing well while doing all that and breastfeeding my baby every couple of hours. But in the middle of greeting the people who attended the funeral, I collapsed. I thought I heard someone's words, but I couldn't do anything. When I came to, I saw my mother-in-law's face turning red in front of me. I must have been unconscious for several minutes. In a corner of the funeral home, I heard an ambulance approaching. Caitlin alongside my parents, who had flown in, were by my side. Daddy told me to protect Mommy from Grandma. Here's the proof. My daughter was holding my husband's phone in her hands. I do remember handing her his phone, miraculously intact, but with a practiced hand, she unlocked it and played a video.
Pregnancy is not a sickness, so get to work.
I'm sorry, but my stomach is bloated. Can I do it later?
You are stable now, right? Start cleaning, you slag.
Mom?
Oh, Henry. Madison wants to clean up so badly. I was just telling her to take care of herself.
The video played had a clear sound. It captures the exact moment of the wife bullying I suffered from, and also the moment she acted as a good mother-in-law to her son. I told you Grandma is a liar. We were surrounded by the confused voices of relatives and friends of my husband and I. Oh, I remember now. It was a video of when we visited my in-laws one time before our son's birth. My husband was looking out for me, but my mother-in-law would take advantage of every chance she got to bully me.
Hey, Caitlin, give me that phone.
No way. I know you're going to try to erase this. As my mother-in-law tried to take the phone away from Caitlin, my parents interrupted.
Mrs. Smith, what is this all about?
Oh, Mr. Miller, it's just Caitlin messing around. It's a misunderstanding.
Mila is my maiden name.
I'd like to talk to you over there.
My red-faced mother-in-law was taken away by my parents. They seemed to be heading to the rented car parked outside. Caitlin, what did you tell everyone? I told everyone what Daddy told me. He said that Grandma is a liar and a jerk to you, that I need to protect you when Daddy is away. Daddy, where are you? My daughter started crying because she remembered that her father was gone. I cried with her too. This was the first time I cried with all my might without worrying. Later, I was told the words someone had said to me when I collapsed. After the funeral, I was taken to the ambulance and put on an IV.
What gives you the right to sleep at your husband's funeral, lazy wife?
Apparently, my mother-in-law said that when I collapsed. Quite a strong line, isn't it? My daughter may not have understood what she was saying, but she was surely angry. Mommy didn't do anything wrong, but Grandma is mad at her. I'm going to protect her from liar Grandma, just like Daddy said. Like that. I believe that my daughter's sense of responsibility as the eldest child now was triggered. My sister-in-law, who was watching the whole thing, told me, Really, I'm sorry about my mother. It's okay. I was able to feel Henry and Caitlin's love. Can't you see that she's making her daughter hear all of this? It was my sister-in-law who looked after my son while all of this happened. She's taking care of my son next to me, right by the ivy pole. Lousy wife. How can she say something like that? A wife is not a slave. Why does she think a mother-in-law is so important? That line, and the fact that the granddaughter revealed my mother-in-law's true identity made my parents furious. Because of her anachronistic beliefs and her actions of putting the health of a mother and a child at risk, they questioned my mother-in-law thoroughly. Of course, my mother-in-law evaded the questioning, saying that it was a misunderstanding, or that she was just trying to be nice. Then, my father-in-law said something very bluntly.
How can you face Henry when you've been harassing Madison like that?
Even my mother-in-law fell quiet. He continued,
I can't deal with you anymore.
My mother-in-law couldn't say anything back. After all that talk, I returned to the funeral home and boarded the bus. I cremated my husband about 2 hours later than scheduled. After a month, at my husband's memorial mass, I was generally feeling better. My son, whom I named Hunter, taking my husband's first letter, is also doing well. My mother stayed over to help me until the memorial mass was safely over. She cooked meals for me and my daughter and took care of the house for me. I experienced for the first time what it means to be taken care of as a postpartum mother. There were many things that happened. First, my sister-in-law declared to her own mother that she no longer wanted connection with her. In addition, my father-in-law and mother-in-law divorced, a middle-aged divorce. Of course, my mother-in-law said she didn't want either one of them. My sister-in-law spit out that she didn't want a mother who could be a bad influence on her and her family. My father-in-law said that their values are too different, and that he no longer has anything but hatred for her. My mother-in-law never had a mother-in-law herself. My father-in-law's mother died before they were married, so she only had a father-in-law.
Pregnancy and giving birth is not a sickness.
I don't think she has the right to say this phrase repeatedly to me. My mother-in-law's reason for her actions was not because she wanted to pass on the mistreatment she had received from her mother-in-law. My sister-in-law was furious at my mother-in-law's actions that came from her malice. My father-in-law and mother-in-law divorced shortly before the memorial mass, and my mother-in-law was forced to leave the house. Her aging parents were in an institution, and she had no one to turn to, so she went to her daughter's house. Don't be silly. I don't see you as my mother anymore. And so, she was turned away. Next, she called my house, and my mother answered the phone.
Oh, Mrs. Smith, I've heard you've been through so much. But thanks to you, my daughter had a much harder time. I heard the other day that right after Caitlin was born, you made my daughter work to bleed. No, Madison didn't say anything. All she said was that she fell by accident. Your husband? Oh, he isn't your husband anymore, is he? Your ex-husband told me about that time because he was the one who called the ambulance. And even this time, it happened right after the baby was born, and the funeral was right after she was discharged from the hospital. It must have been hard for her. But to tell her not to sleep when she collapsed, or to be a lousy wife. It's just too much. Who the hell do you think you are? Oh, did I already make this complaint the other day? So yes, neither my daughter nor the Millers here will provide any assistance. My daughter is too busy with her own life, and we do not wish to be associated with you any longer. That's right, never. That's why we are asking you to stop contacting us. Caitlin? Caitlin doesn't want to see you anymore either. If you come near her, I will report you to the police. Thank you for your understanding. Goodbye.
While I was breastfeeding Hunter, the relationship with my mother-in-law was broken off over the phone. My mother-in-law is only 58 years old, not old enough to receive a pension. She has received a share of the property, but she will have a hard time living from now on. She just shamed all the relatives at the funeral by acting like a terrible mother-in-law. She may not even have a guarantor to rent her house. She's my husband's mother, so I sometimes almost inadvertently show her mercy. But my father told me that I have to get rid of her in order to protect myself and my children. I was a little nervous going into the memorial mass. If my mother-in-law showed up, I was ready to firmly reject her. But my mother-in-law didn't show up.
I can't believe she's a woman who can't even show up at her son's memorial. What a woman. All I can say is that it was a good decision to leave her.
My mother-in-law hasn't even visited her siblings. None of her relatives know where she is. The only thing they could tell us was that my husband's cousin saw her under a bridge. I'm sorry to hear about her downfall, but I can honestly say it's a relief. Oh yes, my father-in-law graciously apologized to me.
I'm sorry I didn't stop her from doing that, even though I was aware of it. I wonder if I can continue to be a grandfather to my grandchildren.
Of course. After all, I'm Henry's wife.
I'm sorry, and thank you.
I consider my father-in-law a man of goodwill, from when he looked away from me breastfeeding.
If she shows up, I will deal with her.
That's what he said, and I'm grateful to him for that. The memorial mass is about to begin. I wonder if my husband in heaven is watching over us. You will have to wait another 40 or 50 years before I can see you again, Henry. I want to see my happy children for you. I will do my best, so just wait for me, okay? Thank you for watching to the end. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.
I'm so angry. You and your parents both make me angry.
Hey, my parents have nothing to do with this, alright?
Shut up. Don't you dare talk back to me. I will never take care or do anything for your parents ever again. I won't have your parents at any of my family's weddings or funerals. If you don't like that, then get the hell out.
Fine, but are you okay with that?
What are you talking about? I'm actually glad that you're leaving. Don't ever contact me again.
As he said that, I confronted my husband, Dan, with a piece of paper. The moment my husband saw the paper, he was surprised.
What? Divorce papers?
My husband was lying on the sofa, but he got up instantly.
Hey, what's the meaning of this? You're divorcing me all of a sudden?
My name is Mary Cooper, and I'm currently a 29-year-old company employee. I currently live with my husband Dan and with our 3-year-old son Sean. I have been working for my father's company since I graduated from college. But, to my annoyance, my husband is completely against it.
I work for a well-known company. Wouldn't it be embarrassing if people found out that my wife works at a fairly small parts factory?
Why would you even say that? When we first got married,
You were showing off to people by saying that I was the CEO's daughter. Why do you even hate my parents and the company my father runs so much these days?
You'll never understand, will you? You should just quit your job.
My husband insults me by saying such things and tells me to quit working. I think it's cool that my father is always enthusiastic about his work, always challenging himself and always pushing forward. And I respect my father very much because he's a person who cares about his employees. So I have no intention of quitting my father's company at all. It actually seems like my husband doesn't like the fact that I respect my father more than him. I was thinking how petty Dan was and started to wonder why he suddenly started saying such horrible things. When I was eating breakfast with my husband and son, my husband said to my son as if he remembered something.
You know what, Sean? When you grow up, go to a good university and work for a major company. Don't you dare ever get a job at a small factory making parts.
I just couldn't believe what Dan was saying to Sean. Hey! Don't talk to our child like that, I said angrily, to which my husband replied,
There's nothing weird about it. I'm just teaching him what's normal in the world.
Why doesn't he realize that this statement in itself is insulting not only to my father and myself, but also to the employees who work at the company? I should rather teach Sean not to be such an inconsiderate man like his own father. No matter how much I tried to warn him, my husband kept saying these kind of terrible things. He seemed to really want me to quit my job. And my husband continued to say and do things after that to hurt me, and kept on telling me to just quit the job like I'd been saying from before. Until now, I have wondered why my husband has become such a cold and terrible person, and I hope that he would at least go back to how he was in the old days. But since I don't see any sign of that, I have given up on him. It's not that I haven't considered a divorce, but Dan's parents are very nice people, and not only me, but my parents also get along very well with them. Which is why I end up hesitating for a divorce, because I don't want to cause any disappointment to my parents and his parents because of our divorce. Dan's parents and my parents are really close, that my father and Dan's father seem to go fishing together a lot, and my mother and Dan's mother both like the same artists and go to live concert shows together frequently. And Dan's parents and my parents were very protective and take very good care of our son. I felt that it would be wrong to take away the environment in which my son, who grew up with so much love and affection, was so happy with. That is why I couldn't be brave enough to divorce Dan. But my love and affection I had for my husband is growing more and more dry. I'm gradually getting to the point where I don't even want to sleep with him, and I sleep with my son in his room these days. Seeing me be like that, my husband didn't like that and tried to force us to sleep in the same room as him, but my son started to cry a lot, perhaps because of my husband's frustration. So he stopped, and he also stopped coming into Sean's room after that. Soon after, my husband and I stopped talking to each other. My husband continued to harass me in order to get me to quit my job. He increased my housework chores by doing things like leaving the dishes on the table after eating, or leaving clothes around the room, and on days off when he was home, he would lounge around on the couch and watch TV all the time doing nothing. He also wasted my effort by going out for drinks with his coworkers even after I made dinner. And when he sees me, he grins at me. What he's doing is really too childish and immature, and it's appalling. A little while later, my husband came home looking very happy.
Hey, I'm home.
Yes, I know. Welcome home.
Another dull greeting from you, huh? Well, I'll forgive you because I'm in a good mood today.
What made you be in a good mood? To be honest, I didn't even want to keep the conversation going, but since he kept on grinning stupidly like that, I asked the question. He really had this face which really just annoyed me.
You really want to know? Well, I guess I don't have a choice. I might be promoted to be the head of the department.
Oh, really? That's great! I thought that was simply amazing. I congratulated him with genuine feelings, but my husband says something else that made me feel down again.
Now, like that, you really don't have to work. Since your husband is the head of the department, you should be quietly at home and be a housewife.
I was utterly and completely dumbfounded to what he had said. It seems like in any conversation I had with him, he'll try to finish the topic by making me try to quit work. Then one day, I took my son to the hospital because he had a fever, and after that, I left him with my mother at my parents' house before going to work. When I arrived at work, everyone looks a little concerned. What's going on? I asked the desk clerk nearby, and he said, well, the president is talking to a business partner right now, and it seems like the president is very angry with him. My father is angry? I was surprised. My father is very gentle and has the capacity to laugh off at most things. So, for my father to be angry at someone must have been a big deal. I wondered what had happened. I was curious, so I went into his office.
Oh, it's you, Mary. I heard Sean had a fever. Is he okay?
Yeah, the fever is gone now, and he's sleeping very well now. Anyways, what's wrong? The employees were worried that you were angry, Father.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, but I heard something very unforgivable.
While my father and I were having this conversation, a young man sitting across from him stood up.
Oh, long time no see, Mary.
Oh, Justin, long time no see. I heard that the business partner came here, but I didn't know it was you, Justin. He is a young employee of a company that my father's company does business with, and he is a very good-natured kid. Justin had taken over the job from the previous person in charge and is currently in charge of our company, and he is a very nice young man who always gifts us with something to eat and talks to us, which is very rare to see these days. But I suddenly had a question in my mind. Why was my father getting angry at Justin, who was a good person? Father, what do you mean you heard something unforgivable?
Well...
Then my father explained to me what Justin had told him. Justin works for an electrical goods manufacturer, and just recently he had succeeded in developing a new business which led to a project with a major company. While he was working on the project with his other employees, thinking about quality and function, they decided to ask my father's company for help if we could produce some of the parts for them. So, Justin came to my father's company and held various meetings to discuss about the project. After making steady preparations, when the project was finally ready to proceed, his boss took away the presentation materials that had been prepared just before the project was about to start. And his boss then took the liberty of making a presentation to the employees and executives and took credit for it. The presentation was accepted by the executives, and his boss might be promoted to be the next department manager. My face grew redder and redder, and I began to get angry. Justin further told me that his boss said, "The company that makes this part is not trustworthy, so I'll ask another company to make it for me." The company he said that wasn't trustworthy was my father's company. My anger reached its peak. Oh, I am so sorry, Justin. My husband did something so stupid and terrible. Hearing this, Justin says, "What? Isn't your boss Dan Cooper at the company you work for?"
Yes, it is. What, are you saying that your husband is that Mr. Cooper?
When I nodded my head, Justin looked very surprised. In other words, that time when my husband was happy that he might be promoted to department head was after he had taken credit for Justin's work. I regretted that I had genuinely congratulated him without knowing that.
I never thought that Dan would say or do such a thing.
When my father said that, I felt awkward for a moment. And then my father saw my face.
What's wrong, Mary? Why are you looking like that?
Oh, I thought that I couldn't hide it anymore. And for the first time, I told my father what my husband had said and done to me until now.
Why didn't you ever tell me that you were being treated that way?
My father told me so, and I explained that I couldn't tell him because Dan's parents and my parents were close, and I felt bad about taking Sean's grandparents away from him. Hearing that, my father then says,
Don't worry about that. You don't have to cut ties with Dan's parents like that. My wife and I are already friends with Dan's parents, so we will continue our personal relationship with them. And it's okay to keep on having Sean see them normally, you know.
Then, what my father has said made me realize. My father was right. It would be easy enough to just stay away from my husband. I wondered why I hadn't realized that, and I felt so much better. But first and foremost, we should prioritize Justin and his team. What he and his team had worked so hard to create was taken away from them. Many people besides Justin were probably in shock and depressed. Didn't you think of protesting together? When I asked Justin about this, he replied that he was being held in a weak position. When I asked him further what he meant, he said that Dan had accused Justin and his team of violating the work hours and rules to the General Affairs Department. As a result, Justin was dropped from the project, which has become a threat to other employees. Both my father and I were appalled by this.
I guess Dan needs to be punished once.
My father said that quietly, but I could sense that there was a great deal of anger in his heart. Then, my father and I, together with Justin and other employees from his team, decided to have regular strategy meetings. They were all upset and afraid because my husband threatened them, but now they were united and eager to get back at him. And we all decided to search together for evidence on how the project was created. We weren't able to find the evidence easily, but Justin and his team members did their best to find them. Justin also told the person in charge of the project from a major company about the situation. The person in charge was a very nice person, and he brought his boss to Justin's company and told the executives and the president of the company about the situation. As a result, it became known to the executives that my husband was not involved in the project at all. My husband apparently complained,
Well, Justin and his team are violating the working hours.
And to that, the employee said, Well, in that case, we will quit. The executives were very upset about this. Since it was obvious that it was Dan's fault, the executives agreed to take disciplinary action against him. In the end, my husband was demoted from a section manager to an ordinary employee, and even had to transfer to a small department rather than being promoted to a department manager, because he had done something terrible to lose the company's trust. On the day he was being demoted, I was waiting for Dan at home. He came home looking dismayed. You came back home late. I need to talk to you.
Well, I'm not in the mood to talk to you right now. Maybe some other time.
With that, my husband lies down on the sofa. Well, I need to talk to you.
Shut the hell up! I'm tired. How selfish are you?
I don't need you to tell me what to do.
Huh? What the hell? Are you arguing back to me? Ugh, I'm so angry. You and your parents both make me angry.
Hey, my parents have nothing to do with this, alright? Besides, your parents and my parents are good friends, remember? Knowing that, why do you say such terrible things about my parents?
Shut up! Don't you dare talk back to me. I will never take care or do anything for your parents ever again. I won't have your parents at any of my family's weddings or funerals. If you don't like that, then get the hell out.
My husband was quite distressed and said such things to me, as if he was trying to take all his anger out on me. But what he said was out of the line. Fine, but are you okay with that?
What are you talking about? I'm actually glad that you're leaving. Don't ever contact me again.
As he said that, I confronted my husband Dan with a piece of paper. The moment my husband saw the paper, he was surprised.
What? Divorce papers?
My husband was lying on the sofa, but he got up instantly.
Hey, what's the meaning of this? You're divorcing me all of a sudden.
You betrayed me, so divorce is what you'll get. Don't you think so?
Hey, wait a minute. Betrayed you? You mean to say that I betrayed you by saying horrible things about your parents? Are you crazy enough to divorce me over something like that?
That doesn't matter anymore. This is why I'm asking for a divorce. With that, I spread out a document which was in an envelope out on the table. It was photos of evidence that my husband was having an affair with a woman whom I've never met.
How come you know?
You look like you're having a great time here.
This is different. It was just an impulse.
I don't care if it was an impulse or a serious one. The fact that you had an affair will never go away. Divorce is absolute. Child support is absolute. Alimony is absolute. And there will be no division of property. If you aren't agreeing to these conditions, you're going to hell.
What? What do you mean?
You apparently met this girl at a bar, but she's a high school student.
What? You gotta be joking, right? She didn't even look that young.
It's true. I hired an investigator to find out if you were doing anything suspicious, and everything came out. And according to the investigation, that girl is a high school sophomore student. Cheating on your own wife alone is just disgusting, but if the world finds out you're with a high school student, you're really doomed for life, and normally you'd be under arrest.
Wait a minute. I'll agree to all the terms of the divorce, so please, just don't say anything about this. Please.
Fine. I don't like people saying that my son's father was arrested either for such a stupid and disgusting reason. And I know some dirt about that high school girl anyways. Yes, the high school girl who said she met him at the bar had been smoking and drinking. So I told the girl and her parents that I would report the drinking and smoking to her school if they didn't pay the alimony. I heard that the girl went to a prestigious all-girls high school, and if the school finds out, she would be expelled at once. So the girl and her parents apologized to me and paid me $40,000, saying that they hoped I wouldn't do that. And my husband, who was afraid of getting arrested, paid me $50,000 in alimony and over $100,000 for child support. All of Dave's savings were now gone, and he was left penniless. But the fact that Dave was having an affair and that the partner was a high school student somehow spread as a rumor at his workplace, and he began to be looked at coldly by all the employees. But since he has no money at all, he has to keep working. And combined with the stress of not knowing when he will be exposed for his illegal activities, he now looks very old for his age and does not look like he is in his 30s. He deserves what he got. Dan's parents apologized to me and my parents for the divorce, and the fact that Dan tried to force me to quit my job along with his affair. But since it was only Dan's fault, both my parents and I were nice to Dan's parents and told them not to apologize and to please continue to be in good terms with each other. Dan's parents were so angry with him that they disowned him eventually. I have no intention of letting Dan see Sean in the future, and now because of what he has done, Dan is completely alone. By the way, Justin and his team were able to work on the project and it was a great success. Both my father and I were very happy to be able to help Justin by providing the parts. I returned home with my son, and I am now working hard as a single mother. Now that I am back home at my parents' place, Dan's parents are happy to see Sean and my parents, who are friends, all at the same time. I hope to continue to enjoy my days with this family connection other than my ex-husband. Taking credit for his colleagues' work, making fun of his wife's family, and to top it off, he had an affair. He is a scumbag husband who can only be described as nothing but a scumbag. I am glad that he was finally punished. I hope Mary will spend happy times with her son, her parents, and Dan's parents from now on. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in our next video.
My husband asks me for a divorce when I already knew he had an affair, and as a result.
Let's get a divorce.
What? Why?
I'm taking over my lover's company, so I don't need you anymore.
My husband, Mark, said this with a look of triumph on his face. From my point of view, I was rather grateful that he started saying about the divorce and confessing about his lover by himself. Okay, I don't really care. Here's the divorce paper. My husband looked at me as he widened his eyes while I handed him the divorce papers I had taken out of the drawer. My name is Lily Smith, and I am a 30-year-old office worker. My husband, Mark, and I have been married for 3 years now. We met at a blind date, which was set up by our mutual friend. My husband approached me aggressively, and I was attracted to him, so that's why we began to go out and go on dates. We went out on dates frequently, and 1 year later, since we began going out, Mark proposed to me and we got married. Mark was always kind and was a gentleman to me, and I thought I would have a very happy life if I married him. In fact, our married life was quite enjoyable, but there were some things that were different from what I expected after we got married. And that was that my husband does not do any housework or chores at all.
I was always eating out at restaurants or eating pre-made meals from shops.
Like that, my husband has rarely cooked any meal by himself, even when he was on his own. He also said that his mother came over to where he lived sometimes, to even do the cleaning for him. So, I always came home from work and did all the housework and chores. Sometimes, I casually appealed to my husband to help me out on some chores, but he stubbornly refused to help. But he never complains when I work late and that he had to have late dinner because of that. So, I guess I should be thankful for that. Other than not doing any housework, he's basically normal and we talk a lot and enjoy each other's companies. I think my physical workload is a bit much having to do all the housework, but I'm getting by these days because I buy prepared foods and cut back on some house chores moderately when I can. So like that, even though I wasn't fully happy, I was still enjoying our married life in my own way. Before I knew it, I had been married to my husband for 3 years. I had hoped that this relationship would change again once we had a child, but we were not able to have a child as we had hoped. Thinking that perhaps one of us might be the cause, I suggested to my husband that we try some tests and do infertility treatment. But to that, my husband's reaction was surprising.
We don't have to have kids, right?
Pardon me? I was completely surprised to what he had said. I had thought that people usually wanted to have kids. But it is true that there may be families who want to spend time alone with their spouses without having any kids. Maybe my husband was thinking the same like that. Just in case, may I ask why?
Well, what can I say? There are a lot of trouble and...
Huh? To be honest, I was disillusioned by this statement from my own husband. It was not because he had a good reason for it, but because it was a random and a very vague reason. But at the same time, I felt that if someone with such a half-hearted feeling, like my husband, had a child in that kind of condition, the child would be very unhappy. I see. Okay, I get it. Then I understand. We won't try for making any kids. When I said that, my husband looked really relieved. I was very disappointed that he did not want any kids that badly. Not only did he not want any kids, but I was doing all the work around the house. Moreover, I can't say out loud so as not to provoke my husband's pride, but my salary is considerably higher than his. So, it is no exaggeration to say that I am the main breadwinner of this house. Furthermore, we have been talking less and less lately than we used to before. My husband has stopped communicating with me more recently. He is on his phone all the time, and on his days off, he often says, "I'm going out for drinks with my friends," and goes out after lunch and comes home late sometimes. On most of the weekends, I am alone at home, and even if we have dinner together at night, he is very silent and isn't talkative, and because of that, I don't feel that the meal tastes that good. If this situation continues, I might as well end the marriage with him. I was having such a hard time in my marriage with my husband that I was even thinking about divorce. And it was at such a point in time that I came to learn about something very surprising. On one Saturday night, my husband was out drinking with his friends as usual. In the midst of all this, I received a text message from one of my best friend, Anna. I was surprised to get a message from her out of the blue because she said that she and her husband were going to a luxurious restaurant for a dinner today for their wedding anniversary. But what she had messaged me was even more surprising. "Hey, Lily, your husband Mark just walked into the restaurant with a woman I've never seen before." I froze when I saw Anna's message. No way. Is my husband having an affair with another woman? It's at a fancy restaurant, and he's never even taken me there or been there with me. According to Anna and her observation, it didn't seem like a work or friends atmosphere, but clearly exuded the feeling of lovers. I was getting angrier and angrier at my husband. And then, it all made sense. The hassle of having children. The fact that he frequently went out for drinks with his friends on the weekends. And the fact that he was so concerned about his phone. If I thought about it, all of these behaviors certainly make it likely that he was having an affair. Why didn't I suspect it earlier? But I still don't really know if he really is having an affair with another woman or not. So, I immediately requested an investigator to look into the case. I didn't officially obtain any solid evidence of his affair yet. Until I saw the evidence that clearly and visibly showed that Mark was having an affair, I decided to hold out just a little bit of hope. But reality is cruel. A few weeks later, I received the results of the investigation, and all I could see was that it definitely showed my husband having an affair with another woman. I was indeed surprised and shocked. Although we have been having many differences and miscommunications recently, I still loved my husband and wanted to believe in him. However, my husband had acted in a way that violated my feelings. I can't believe it. How could he have an affair with another woman so easily? Moreover, it seems that my husband often goes to various fancy restaurants with his lover. Is he really spending that much money to devote all on his lover? And when I began to think that, I had finally realized something. It was something my husband had been asking me to do for about 6 months. My husband had asked me to put a little more money into the house because he wanted to send money to his parents. Since I was earning more than my husband, he asked me to support him a little bit. It's not like I didn't dislike my in-laws, and my own parents had already passed away and I had no relatives who I can send money to, so I just agreed to his idea. I am sure that my husband used that money to devote for his own lover. Thinking that, I became even more disillusioned with my husband. I wondered how far he would go to use me for his own convenience. I was also angry at myself for not realizing about this earlier, that my husband has been deceiving me all this time. So, I decided to start making various preparations so that I could divorce my husband at any time. First of all, I had to prepare to move out. I no longer wanted to live in this house because it would remind me of my husband. So, I decided to look for a new place to live. I was busy with work, so it was not easy to find a new house in between my busy work schedule. But still, I visited a real estate agency at the same time my husband was meeting with his friends or his lover, as usual, and looked for a good room suitable for living alone. It was a month later that I was able to decide on a new place to live. Now, I had a place to move to. All that remained was to take revenge on my husband. I hired a lawyer and prepared for it. Then one day, my husband called me into the living room and said he wanted to talk to me. Wow, it's pretty rare for you to call out for me to have a talk. My husband looked annoyed when I said that.
It won't take that long.
I did as I was told and sat down on the sofa, waiting for my husband's next words. Then, my husband grinned and began to say this.
Let's get a divorce.
I did not expect for my husband to begin the talk and initiate about divorce. I was genuinely surprised. I wondered what kind of process he was going to use to try to get a divorce with me. So I asked him, pretending to not know about the truth. What? Why? Then my husband responds something very surprising.
I'm taking over my lover's company.
Excuse me?
So, I don't need you anymore. Thanks for supporting me this whole time. Not only do you earn a lot of money, but you took very good care of the house for me. You were great as a housekeeper, who also earned a lot for me. But I won't be needing that anymore. Now, I will have a beautiful young wife and a promising future as a CEO. I am truly a winner in life. I'm sorry for what I did to you, but don't hold any grudges against me.
My husband says this with a victorious look on his face. From my point of view, I was rather grateful that he started saying about the divorce and confessing about his lover by himself. Okay, I don't really care. Here's the divorce paper. When I handed him the divorce papers I had taken out of the drawer, he had a very surprised look and his eyes widened.
What the hell? Aren't you surprised by the whole situation? And when did you even prepare the divorce papers?
Well, your attitude towards me lately has been cold, you know. That's why I thought we were getting a divorce. And it would be more convenient for you if we got divorced early.
Huh? Yeah.
My husband was surprised, but he realized it was a win-win situation for him and started to grin.
I didn't think that you were that understanding, but thanks for that then. Thanks for everything until now. Well, enjoy your single life at best.
My husband seemed to be enjoying himself while he said that. I pretended that I was not angry at him and spoke to my husband frankly. Have you already talked to your lover's father?
Oh, no, not yet. But she told me that it's decided that the man she chooses will be the one to take over as the CEO. So, since I'm going to marry her, it's a done deal that I'm going to be the CEO, you know.
I see. Well, I wish you all the best.
Oh, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life.
My husband looks like he's getting carried away. And he doesn't even know the hell he's going to experience after this. I silently watched my husband, an idiot, pack up his belongings and leave to go to his lover. I struggled to hold back my laughter until he left the house. I then sold the house shortly after my husband had left and completed my move as well. The next step was to officially begin my revenge against my husband. What I would do, however, was very simple. All I had to do was send a content-certified letter to my husband's workplace and to his lover's parents' house. With this, my revenge against my husband was complete. All that remained was for my husband to just ruin himself all on his own. Sure enough, 2 or 3 days after I sent the content-certified mail, I received a phone call from my husband. Hello?
Hey, what the hell did you do? Why the hell did you send a content-certified letter to my workplace and her parents' house?
Huh? Well, why wouldn't I send them? You had an affair behind my back, you know. An affair. Normally, you would file a claim for alimony against the husband and his mistress, and then proceed with the divorce, right?
What? I thought you forgave me and my lover.
Are you stupid? Where in the world would anybody simply forgive the people who betrayed the marriage and step aside as if nothing happened?
No way. But how did you know where her parents lived?
Even before you confessed, I had hired a professional investigator to investigate your affair and obtained information about your lover. So, I knew that she was the daughter of the president of a company, and I knew her family home.
How can this be?
So, what happened when I sent a content-certified letter to her parents' house? I asked, with a huge grin on my face. Then, my husband got angry as if he remembered and said this.
Well, yes, because of you, I'm in a lot of trouble. Because she didn't know that I was married. That's why I secretly broke up with you and divorced you and tried to be with her. But since you sent a content-certified letter to her parents' house, that means that her parents found out about the affair, and now I'm in a tight spot. She's furious that she was cheated on, and her father has filed a complaint to the CEO of my company where I work at. And I have been fired as someone who has caused a big problem within the company. Her father's company was an important business partner of ours.
Aw, too bad.
This is all your fault. You better take responsibility for this.
Huh? What the hell are you saying? You were the one who betrayed me and had an affair behind my back, right? I only made a legitimate request. I'll make sure you pay my alimony.
No way. There's no way I can pay for your alimony after I got fired from my job.
Well, I couldn't care less about that. Get a job right now and pay me back every little bit you can.
You've got to be kidding me. I'll go to your place right now and force you to live with me.
You know where I live?
Huh? What the hell are you saying? You're living at our house that we bought together, right?
Our house? You only see things in your own convenient way, don't you? I bought that house in my name, so I already sold it.
Oh no, no way. Then where am I supposed to go now that I've been kicked out of her house?
I don't know. You're a grown man, so do something about it on your own. Okay, well, I'm gonna hang up then.
Hey, wait, don't hang up.
I hung up the phone and blocked the call, not caring about my husband's panicked voice. Just as I wanted, my husband lost everything and I was so relieved. After that, I officially filed a claim for alimony through my lawyer. I heard that my husband was living in a cheap apartment while working at a part-time job, and he's now desperately trying to pay the alimony. He also tried to ask his own parents for help, But since I had told them about me giving money to him to send for his parents, they were so furious and said that they would cut off ties with their own son. Therefore, my husband seems to be living a lonely and poor life alone, having been abandoned by his own parents. Meanwhile, I am living comfortably in my new place and working hard at my job. I have recently been promoted and my salary has gone up even more, so I am thinking of taking up a new hobby and live a nice, luxurious life. Mark is such a cowardly husband, trying to get a divorce in secret and aiming for a better marriage. But then, wouldn't it be better for him if he didn't say anything about taking over his lover's company? I guess that kind of thing is what makes a scumbag husband after all. I am glad that Lily was able to get revenge on her scumbag husband. I hope you will be able to marry a wonderful man this time. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in our next video.
My husband and in-laws came after my inheritance, even though they refused to attend my dad's funeral.
Why should we attend the funeral of someone who has nothing to do with us in the first place? Pardon me? What does she mean by nothing to do with them? We don't have time to attend a stranger's funeral. You go ahead and have it on your own. Later, when I returned home from the funeral, I saw a file on the table. Divorce papers. At that moment, I made up my mind to cut off all ties with my husband and his family. I would use that money only for me and my mother. My name is Amelia, a 30-year-old office worker. My husband Joe and I have been married for 3 years. He and I met on a dating app. He carried himself in a gentle and calm manner that I thought if I was with him, I would be able to spend peaceful and happy times. We exchanged our numbers and went on a series of dates. As expected, he was always kind, and I found him very comforting. He took very good care of me, and I seriously considered marrying him. It was fortunate that he thought the same and proposed to me. Of course, I accepted immediately, and so we were engaged, and immediately went to greet each other's parents. We first met with mine. Both my mom and dad felt comfortable with his gentle personality and rejoiced in our engagement. Next, we went to greet his family. In addition to his parents, his sister Erin, who still lived with them, was present. They seemed to be a close-knit family, and Joe was smiling more than usual. I loved him more when I found him not only kind, but also family-oriented. I was excited about marrying him, imagining that we would have a very happy and joyful family with children. However, I had one complaint. It was about a wedding. He and I had talked a lot about it and were making all kinds of preparations. But then his mother, Leah, and Erica meddled with us. At first, he just mentioned her in the conversations like, "My mom suggested this." I was grateful for more ideas, so I listened quietly. Leah gradually began to interject a lot of suggestions, and by the time I realized, she was an active member of my wedding preparation. I wanted to make the decision along with Joe, and was annoyed with her presence, but of course I couldn't ask her to leave. I had no choice but to keep quiet and accept her. Then even Erin started to join in and eagerly shared her ideas for my wedding. When I told them what I had in my mind, they disagreed and suggested doing it their way. I was frustrated as it was my wedding, but Joe agreed with them. I thought if he liked their suggestions, then I should have let him have it his way. The worst part was when it came to my wedding dress. I already had decided which one to wear. When I tried it on for the first time, it looked really good on me, and I loved it. But Leah and Erin criticized me for being tacky. They brazenly spoke out whatever was in their mind, like it was out of the question to wear such a dress, and it blurred my body line that I looked like an old lady. They picked out a dress and forced me to wear it. It was not my style, and I could see that it didn't suit me at all. I told Joe about it, but he didn't take my side and said his mom and sister went out of their way to choose it for me. This was definitely disappointing for me. It was our wedding, but why couldn't he respect my opinion? Otherwise, he was dependable as he took the initiative of doing the housework and cooking for us. We were already living together at that time, and I loved him so much that I had no desire to leave him. I ended up wearing the dress Leah and Erin picked out for me during the ceremony, and the dress I liked was worn for the reception. Leah and Erin looked pleased, but when I asked my friends about it later, they all said the other one looked much better on me. My close friends even thought it was odd that I chose something out of my usual taste. My memories of the wedding were both good and bittersweet. It was also the event that made me distrust my in-laws. After that, I was very careful in my dealing with them. As a result, my relationship with them wasn't bad after 3 years of marriage. But then there was an incident that changed everything. It all started when my dad became seriously ill and required nursing at home. I went to my parents' house in between my work to help my mom take care of him. Joe was understanding and didn't argue about me spending my time away from home, and did the housework by himself. On the contrary, he even drove me there when he had time. Days went by and Christmas arrived. It was when I offended my in-laws. I took my leave from work earlier and had been staying at my parents' house to help my dad, who had limited mobility. I helped my mom decorate the house and prepare Christmas dinner. The 3 of us spent the holiday together. In fact, the doctor told me that my dad's condition wasn't good, and I didn't know how much longer I had with him. I wanted to have as much time as possible with my dad and mom. That seemed to have angered my in-laws. When I was having a relaxed family time, I received a call from Joe. "Hello, Han. What's going on?" "Oh, sweetheart, can you come over here right away?" "Why? What's wrong?" "My mom and dad are mad that you're not joining us." "But I told you that I wanted to spend time with my parents this year. Didn't you tell them that?" "Of course I told them, but they don't agree. My mom says a wife should visit her husband's parents on Christmas Day. My relatives are waiting for you too." I was speechless. He understood my dad's condition better than anyone in my laws, yet he was letting them manipulate the situation. "I'm sorry, but I've decided to spend this year with my own parents. I can't join you guys," I said with a firm voice. He cowardly said, "Don't say that." He couldn't stand on his own feet against his parents and pleaded with me to make it happen. My in-laws were very healthy, and if Erica and other relatives are celebrating together, I didn't see what the big deal of me missing. In light of all this, I wanted to celebrate with my parents that year. This incident caused my relationship with my in-laws to deteriorate. Later on, I visited them with a box of sweets to apologize, but I was met by their blatantly cold demeanor upon my arrival. "Oh my, you come too late. What are you doing here?" I just came for the holiday greeting. Here's a box of sweets." Leah took the package and snarled, "I don't need your greeting." She seemed to be quite upset, so I apologized for missing the celebration. "I'm sure you've heard of Joe. My father is very ill, and I don't know how much longer he lives, so I wanted to spend this Christmas with him. I hope you understand." My in-laws gave me cold stares, crossing their arms. "You don't really care about us anyway, do you?" Leah blurted with spite. "No way, that's not true." "Well then, show us your sincerity. Show us how much you care." "Sincerity?" "That's right. First of all, go and buy the sweets we like. Not these randomly selected ones." With that, she threw the present I gave her into the trash. I was stunned. What a terrible action on her part. I looked at Joe, who had an awkward expression. Erin spoke up. "I'd like to try Angela's tarts." It was an expensive patisserie. They had a luxurious price tag for little tarts. My father-in-law followed her. "Then I'll have some pumpkin pie from John's Country Kitchen." It was another fancy pie factory. Finally, Leah said, "I want chocolates from Valerie's." They were as expensive as the tarts Erin asked for. Moreover, the shops mentioned were located slightly apart from each other. It would have been very difficult to fulfill all their wishes at once. "Can I get one of them today?" They gave me the same cold stare that they had given me earlier. The next one to speak up was my husband. "Of course not. You'll have to get them all." I felt great dismay toward him. As one would expect with such an unreasonable request, Joe of all people would have been on my side. Moreover, on the way to his parents' house, he said, "I'll do my best to repair the damage between you and my family." We were there, and he immediately took their side. I got into the car feeling frustrated with him, and hurried to buy the things they requested. When I came back, I was questioned why I took so long, and was called useless for being late. They were all popular shops, and I had to wait in line. Also, none of them were close to each other, so it was no wonder it took so long. I didn't understand why I was being scolded. Since then, they regularly called me to their house and used me like a servant. "You said you would take care of us, so of course you would do this much, right?" They made me do housework, cook, and help with the grocery shopping, to name a few. They really made me do a lot of things for them. When I reached my limit, I told them that I was fed up with being treated so unreasonably, and refused to visit them. No matter how much I tried to satisfy them, their attitude toward me didn't improve. On the contrary, it was getting worse. Besides, it was hard for me to take care of both my dad and in-laws. So I decided to just go to my parents' house. Joe blamed me for not obeying his family, but I had more than enough with him. I made it clear to him that I didn't deserve to be treated like a housekeeper or a slave any longer. My in-laws were apparently complaining about me, but I ignored them and focused on my dad's care. In the meantime, his condition worsened and he was rushed to the hospital. Unfortunately, he couldn't be saved this time and passed away. My mom and I were both devastated, but we had a lot of work to do, like preparing for the funeral. We pushed our feelings aside until at least after the arrangements were made. While we were both busy, I called Joe and explained the situation. He was just at his parents' house, and I asked them to attend the funeral. He agreed, but then a few minutes later, he called me back. When I picked up the phone, Leah's voice came out. "Hello, is this Amelia?" "Hi, Leah. Is everything okay?" "Who do you think you are?" "Pardon me?" "You're so superior, suddenly asking us to come to your funeral." "Oh, no, I didn't mean..." "Why should we attend the funeral of someone who has nothing to do with us in the first place?" "Pardon me? What does she mean by nothing to do with them?" "We don't have time to attend a stranger's funeral." "Stranger? Joe and I are married, so we are family." "Yes, a useless daughter-in-law like you is a stranger. So your parents are also strangers." "We don't care about your father's funeral. You go ahead and have it on your own." Then she hung up the phone. I was in shock. I sent a message to Joe in a panic, but he replied, "My parents say I don't have to go, so I'm not coming either." I was flabbergasted that I read the message over and over again. He sounded not to have his own will. I was amazed that he was so under his parents' thumb. I focused on my dad for the time being, and my mom and I went ahead with the funeral. When my relatives asked me why Joe and his family were not present, I gave them an honest answer. Everyone was furious and said I should disassociate myself from such people. I was thinking about divorce too. When I got home, I needed to have a talk with Joe. Later, when I returned home from the funeral, I found a file on the table. I was surprised to see there were divorce papers inside. Joe's part was already filled in. The witness column had the name of his relatives. Joe was not at home, and I didn't even get a chance to talk to him. I was sure this was his intention. At that moment, I made up my mind to cut all ties with him and his family. If that was what he wanted, I wasn't going to hesitate. I immediately contacted a divorce lawyer, packed my belongings, and went back to my parents' house. My mom was listening to the phone conversation at the funeral. When I told her about the divorce, she welcomed me back warmly, saying, "I'm glad this would save you from more trouble." I was honestly glad to leave Joe at this point in my life. If I had stayed married to him, my dad's inheritance would have ended up in my in-laws' hands. It was only for my mom and me. A few days later, when I was spending peaceful days with my mom, I received a call from Joe. "Hey Amelia, how long are you going to be gone?" "What are you talking about? I've already left you." He sounded so dumb. "What do you mean you left me?" "The divorce papers you left behind. That was your intention, wasn't it? I've had enough with you guys, so I've filed them." "Oh no, seriously?" "I did it because my parents told me to use it to scare you. I had no intention of actually divorcing." I was utterly disgusted. "You really don't have your own opinion, do you? It's a good thing I left you." He was apparently calling me from his parents' house, and I was on speaker. The voice on the phone changed to Leah. Hey, what a selfish person you are. What do you mean? You're the one who made him use divorce, aren't you? I just did what you wanted me to do and filed it. You're such an arrogant daughter-in-law. I am not anymore. Shut up. It's unbelievable that you filed for divorce before we've even spoken about the division of property and stuff. Didn't you inherit the fortune when your father died? Give us half of that money. Joe was still your husband when he died. He will get half of the property. I see, so we'll split it 50-50. That's right. How much did you inherit? $300,000. Oh my gosh. The Ford family shouted with joy when they heard the large sum. Joe then will receive $150,000. If we get that much money, we don't need you anymore. After you transfer it to us, you can go on living your life as you please. They were beyond belief selfish and bunch of airheads. What are you talking about? My father's inheritance is not part of the property division. It's all mine. And besides, do you remember calling me and my parents strangers? I don't have any money to spend on others. Too bad for you, but let it go. The other end of the phone suddenly quieted down. No way. Are you sure we won't get a penny? Yes, I'm sure. Never mind the money. Isn't it good enough to get rid of a bratty daughter-in-law like me? As soon as I said it, Leah changed her attitude and started to implore me. Amelia, dear, everything we've said and done so far is just a prank, you know. It's like a surprise that took a long time. That's right. We consider you family. Such a blatant lying was heinous. It's only a matter of time before I never have to deal with these people again. I'm hanging up now. If you show up at my house, I'll call the police right away. They fell silent. I hung up the phone and blocked the calls. Then, just to be safe, my mom and I sold the house and moved out. I was glad we did. My ex-in-laws broke the window of the house and burst in with some weapons to get money from me, all from resentment. There was someone else already living there, so they were immediately arrested. As a result, Joe, his father, and Erin lost their jobs, and the Ford family is unemployed and living a miserable life now. I, on the other hand, signed a contract with my mom for a reasonably priced rental apartment. My dad's inheritance will be used to fund my retirement, and I am leading a peaceful and tranquil life. I will continue to work hard and live a happy life with my mother.
My husband of 35 years asked for a divorce and tried to rob me of my retirement fund, so I retaliated.
Your cooking is horrible. You're old, and you've retired and are jobless now. There is no value or reason for me to be your husband anymore. I did such a good job being with you. Let's get a divorce ASAP. No alimony, just the 50-50 split of the joint property including your $200K in retirement. I'm so considerate, right?
When my retirement benefits came in, my husband suddenly confronted me with the divorce. The reason was my inadequacy as a wife. In all the decades we've been married, he had never taken care of his family life. I already knew too well what the real reason was. I glanced at his face.
He must have thought I was in a state of shock. He had a look of glory, as if to say, I brought you to the depths of despair. A truly terrible betrayal, but then I could retaliate against him with peace of mind, couldn't I? Yes, I suppose so. If we are getting a divorce, we have to settle our finances.
Right? Let's get it done, and you get the hell out of my life.
You're gonna have to settle it.
Huh?
I calmly held out something in front of him. His one-way ticket to hell. I am an ordinary housewife, 60 years old this year. I've completed my employment to the full term, and I'm about to retire. When I was younger, it was still rare for women to attend university. I was eager to learn how the world worked and wanted to enjoy my youth, so I decided to continue my study in economics. As I studied, I gradually came to understand how the world was connected to my life. My humble dream was to manage my own restaurant, but I decided to work as a public servant in search of stability. My husband Mark was a classmate of mine at the same university. Although we majored the same, we had little to do with each other at first. We happened to be in the same club in our junior year and started to interact often. A lot of time was spent together at club events and on our thesis research. We gradually became close to each other, but didn't start dating until after graduation. I regularly went out for drinks with him and other university friends and enjoyed our time complaining about each other's workplaces. Among them, we especially got along well and sometimes went out for a drink just the two of us. I didn't dislike him and enjoyed his company on many occasions. One thing led to another. We naturally became an ordinary couple. We normally got together at either of the houses and just lazed around on the weekends. I used to cook something simple, and we ate it together or went to a fast food chain. Occasionally, we splurged a little and enjoyed eating at a nice restaurant. Every summer and winter holiday, we took a trip abroad or to other parts of the country. After 5 years of dating, we decided to get married. I was turning 30, a milestone year for me. I thought it was the right time, and we both agreed it was a good time to start a family. 2 years after our marriage, our long-awaited daughter Maggie was born. It was my first experience with pregnancy and childbirth, and I had a lot of worries. Even so, Mark seems to be taking it much easier. I wasn't pleased with him, but managed to put up with his nonchalance in silence. Behind the scenes, there was my sister Stephanie. About the same time I graduated from university, our parents passed away. She got a job right out of high school, and I was already employed, so we were financially stable. We both loved our parents and supported each other through hard times. We lived about a 10 minutes walk apart, and if something happened to either of us, we ran to each other immediately. She was unmarried and not dating anyone. She had a pessimistic view of a relationship as a result of having numerous scumbag boyfriends after high school. The first guy she dated was quite a playboy, who cheated around on her. He had borrowed money from a loan shark under her name and went on a spree. Thanks to him, she still carried distrust and avoided meeting men. She understood me well. When I told her I was pregnant and struggling, she cared for me more than anyone else and came over every day to help me with the housework. Mark had an old-fashioned idea and refused to do any chores. I was working and doing housework while my morning sickness was so bad. I was totally exhausted until I went on maternity leave. Stephanie really helped me throughout, and I was able to deliver without any problems. Mark was present at the birth, and we were able to share the excitement. However, he abandoned childcare after that. On top of it, he complained about dinner being late and his lack of sleep from a crying baby. He became grumpier by the day. I was grateful for Stephanie, who was coming to help me on those days after work. She also loved kids and took care of Maggie as well. She and Mark got along well, and she was very good at handling his bad mood. "Oh my God, Mark, what are you talking about? Drink, drink, drink."
Oh yeah? I will take your word for it and have some.
I felt I had managed to keep things going because she was there for me through all the hard times. It was hard to balance housework and childcare every day, but just like when we were dating, we kept the tradition and traveling in summer and winter. That was my motivation to push myself hard. Fortunately, Maggie grew up healthy. I was relieved that she was able to enter the university of her choice. She went on to study Spanish at the university. She loved traveling abroad and wished to find a job that she was passionate about. She looked for something she could keep training her skill. After graduation, she became a translator at a trading company. She assisted in translating difficult documents, and I couldn't help but be a proud parent. She was finally on her own, and I was approaching my retirement age. I had saved enough money and would receive a large sum of retirement fund. Since I was going to have a lot of time, I wanted to try something new. In the meantime, I noticed something strange. Mark was coming home late those days. Usually, he returned within an hour after he got off of work, but he started coming home at around 10 or 11 p.m. He ate out more often than usual as well.
I've been in a slightly better position these days, and I'm going out to entertain my clients. That's why I'm coming home late. I'm about to retire, so it's kind of a last push.
I was skeptical that his company was entrusting such an important job to someone so close to retirement. He sounded quite happy about it, so I let it go without questioning him. Later, I asked Stephanie when she came over. "Mark has been coming home late lately. He says he's taking out his clients. Could it be that he's having an affair just before he turns 60? Don't be ridiculous. I'm sure he's just putting in his last effort, as he says. I know him well too, but he doesn't have that kind of energy anymore, does he? You must know it better than anyone." I was probably overthinking. I imagined a carefree life together when we retired and wanted to enjoy going out like we used to. I didn't want to believe that he was cheating on me at that point, and pushed the thought to the back of my head. One day, while all this was going on, I got a call from Maggie. "Mom, you like to drink, don't you? I found a stylish bar the other day. Let's go together. Of course it's on me, so don't worry." "Wow, you sound so adult now. I will take your word for it. Let's go." I was so happy to hear her all grown up and decided to take the rare opportunity. A few days later, we met for drinks. I knew at a glance that it was the kind of trendy place she liked. It was a cafe bar that mainly served craft beer and wine. The chef, who was well-versed in both American and French cuisine, offered a wide range of dishes. The atmosphere of the bar was also very cozy and relaxing. "You always come to such a nice place? Isn't it quite expensive? Are you making a good living?" "I don't come here all the time. I only come here on special occasions like tonight. Besides, it's not that expensive." We joked around, enjoying our first outing together in a while. She recently found a boyfriend. He worked at the same company as her and sounded like a prominent employee. Finally, being able to talk about things like this with her moved me deeply, and I almost cried. Then I witnessed a shocking scene. When I went to use the restroom, I saw Mark sitting at the counter. The person sitting next to him was Stephanie. I wondered why he was there with her. He was supposed to be taking his client out that night. I thought about calling out to them, but the way they were behaving didn't look like they were just relatives. They were sitting so close and looked like they were boyfriend and girlfriend. I even saw his arm around his waist, and he had that sweet look on his face like when we used to date. I felt nostalgic and a tightness in my chest all at once. Even if he was drunk, that's a bit much, isn't it? She seems pretty happy though. I was upset, but I calmed myself down and went back to the table. Maggie sensed something from my expression. "Mom, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "No, actually." I told her everything I had seen earlier and said, "Well, I guess he must have gotten tired of me. Stephanie is prettier and smarter. This is what happens when you've been together for almost 30 years. Holy cow! He's been having an affair with her? Unbelievable. You don't need to blame yourself. There's nothing wrong with the person being cheated on. The person who cheats has a problem. I'm with you, Mom. Don't let him get away with it anymore. I know what you have been going through. Let's make him regret it." She encouraged me to face up to the reality, and I decided to confront him. With advice from her, I started off by secretly taking pictures of them together as evidence. 3 months after the shocking encounter, I finally reached retirement. It was a bittersweet moment to realize that I no longer worked there after so many years, but I was also looking forward to my second life. I spent my days doing housework and what I had been wanting to do. Mark was the same age as me, and he was going to retire in 6 months.
Hey, how much do you have in your retirement fund?
He asked me a few days after I retired. $200,000. But what is it all of a sudden? It's mine anyway.
Yeah, I know that. I'm just asking so that I can visualize how much I will get in 6 months.
I could see that he was grinning, but I pretended not to notice. Then, his attitude suddenly changed about 2 months afterward.
We were getting a divorce.
Excuse me? What's going on?
I've been thinking for a long time that I don't like your cooking. I've never really thought it tasted good. I used to think you were pretty, but now you're older. You've become really haggard. I'm even embarrassed to walk outside with you. You lack empathy too. That's pretty fatal for a woman, don't you think? I don't know how I have been able to put up with you all this time. I've reached my limit, so I want a divorce.
Well, that's what you've been thinking all this time. I understand. Let's get a divorce. I can't be with someone who despises me either. I immediately agreed with him. He grinned and spoke enthusiastically.
Thank you for all your hard work. Now it's time to talk about our finance. I'm going to take your retirement fund. It's our shared property.
I see. Then I will make sure to charge you alimony. Don't you pretend you know nothing.
I don't know what you are talking about. Don't make it harder than it needs to be.
Do you still insist that you don't know about this? I laid out evidence pictures of his affairs on the table. This was 2 months ago, when you said you were taking clients out but meeting Stephanie. And this was... Actually, I hired a private detective after I retired and had him collect evidence of the affairs. It turned out that he was meeting her almost every day. No wonder she stopped coming over and didn't contact me anymore. From now until the divorce is finalized, I'm going to stay with Maggie. You can have Stephanie move in and live together. Anyway, I will not be coming back. So long. I packed my suitcase with everything I needed and headed right over to Maggie's house. I informed her of the whole situation, and she warmly welcomed me in. I see you finally got it all done. Good job, Mother. Make yourself at home until you find your own place. Thank you. I will take up your offer. If your boyfriend comes over or something, I will go somewhere else, so just let me know. From there, I filed for divorce from Mark and several tort claims against Stephanie through the lawyer I had consulted beforehand. I asked him to set the amount of alimony higher than the market rate for a mature divorce. Mark and Stephanie were quite shocked to see the amount and called me in panic.
Hey, you're awful. What the hell is this amount?
I asked my lawyer and he said this is a reasonable amount. There is no way to hide your affair, so can I ask you not to complain? Stephanie is with you, isn't she? I don't know how long you two have been in a relationship, but I'm pretty angry with her too. She's the only family I have left, but you both better pay up to the last cent. I will leave the rest to my lawyer.
Wait a minute. I already relied on your retirement money to buy the car. What am I going to do about that?
Why should I care? You bought it, so you pay for it. If you don't have the money, return it or get a loan yourself. Then I hung up on him. After that, I reported the divorce to his boss. I knew him well as he had come over for dinner several times. I figured Mark was going to save his face at work by spreading lies about me. I couldn't allow that to happen. I'm sorry to bother you, but I want to let you know that Mark and I are getting a divorce.
What? He never mentioned it with me. What happened?
He was having an affair with my sister. What's more, he asked for a divorce and tried to take my retirement money. Can you believe that?
That's a serious matter. I will report it to my superiors.
From then on, things didn't go the way Mark hoped for. The divorce was finalized, but I was a little concerned about what happened to the car he had purchased. But I didn't have time to worry about other people, so I just forgot about it. A month after Mark retired, he stormed into Margie's house. Her place was kind of cozy, and I couldn't find an apartment I liked, so I was still staying with her.
I'm sorry. Can we get back together? Paying for alimony is hard, and I'm struggling to live a normal life.
He started talking about his recent situation. He had an emotionally very difficult few months at work, as what I told his boss leaked out from somewhere and made him feel ashamed. He had been looking forward to his retirement fund, but it was reduced drastically due to a tip-off about the wrongdoing he had done behind the scenes. He of course gave up on buying a car. He had not saved much as he somehow depended on me, and his social security wasn't enough to live comfortably. When he was charged a big alimony, he and Stephanie had broken up. They were both struggling to pay up the amount. Stephanie was also counting on my retirement fund and bought a few things. She had a lot of credit card bills and loans that she was in financial trouble. Mark had been abandoned by her and was destined for a lonely second life. You're just after my money, right? Do you realize that you've only been talking about yourself since you got here? I have nothing to do with you anymore. You're the one who cheated on me and tried to steal my money. Karma is a bitch, you know. Now you get out.
Wait. I'm really sorry. You were right.
He was on his knees pleading. The way he did it looked staged, so I was sure he must have done it at work too. Maggie finally spoke up after observing our conversations. Do you know how hard life was for Mom? She had been working and taking care of the house all by herself. You never helped her with anything. If she said something, you got cranky, so she kept quiet. I always thought you were an asshole. To top it all off, you cheated on her and tried to rob her. I just can't believe it. And now you ask her to get back together because you need the money. Can you humiliate yourself even more? I never want to see your face again, you traitor. Being told this much by his daughter mortified him that he left in a miserable state. I'm completely freed from work now that I'm enjoying a comfortable second life. I found a perfect apartment for myself and have been throwing home parties with my ex-coworkers and friends. Thanks to my retirement fund and alimony, most of my financial problems have been solved, and I live my life without being tied down by money. I feel like my relationship with my daughter is better than before. I was recently introduced to her boyfriend. He is a nice young man, just as I had imagined. I feel I could trust him with her for the time being. They even take me on trips when they get time off. I guess she doesn't want me to feel lonely, and she says it's her time to pay me back. If there is one thing I can wish for from her, it is to see my grandchildren as soon as possible. I will wait patiently for her to reach that phase. Now that I've settled down, I'm starting to fulfill a dream I had when I was young, to run a small cafe. My second life has just begun.
My husband, who had been kind to me, became arrogant towards me after we got married. He doesn't have a proper job and relies on my income. If I dare to complain even a little, he becomes enraged and resorts to violence. I was gradually worn down by stress. At that time, I met with an accident and ended up with a lower limb disability. And on a snowy day, my husband kicked me out of the house.
I refuse to take care of you for the rest of my life.
Thus ended our married life. 1 year after the divorce, I encountered my ex-husband, Andrew, again. I smiled warmly at him and said, "Thank you for that time."
Huh?
Actually, something good happened at that time. My name is Kira, and I'm 29 years old. I work as an office worker. I'm in my 3rd year of marriage with my husband, Andrew, who is 2 years older than me. We don't have children yet, and live together in an apartment. We met at a drinking party, invited by colleagues at work. Andrew was cheerful and skilled at his job. Since I tend to be shy, his outgoing nature seemed dazzling to me. I started to be interested in him and gathered the courage to approach him. Andrew also seemed interested in me, and we decided to try dating. The relationship progressed smoothly, and before we knew it, we decided to get married. A happy married life was supposed to begin. At that time, I truly believed it. However, after marriage, Andrew changed. His gentlemanly demeanor disappeared, and he started to show a bossy, arrogant attitude towards me.
Hey, what are you dilly-dallying for? Hurry up and make some food. You're such a useless wife.
I respond to him feeling fed up. I'm in the middle of making it, so don't rush me. Besides, it's your fault for eating all the prepared side dishes in advance.
Don't make excuses. I had no choice because there were no snacks for the drinks. You should have been considerate and prepared some snacks. Can't you even understand such simple things, even though you're my wife?
Andrew treats me like a servant. Even though we both work, it's taken for granted that I do all the household chores. He doesn't lift a finger to help with dishes, cooking, or cleaning. When he comes home from work, all he does is laze around watching TV or playing games. Even when I'm unwell, he unapologetically demands that I take care of the housework. If I absolutely can't manage, he grumbles while buying meals from the convenience store. And of course, I'm the one who has to clean up the resulting mess. On top of all this, he's quick to criticize despite being the one who manages the finances. Even the dish I went through the trouble of making.
First of all, this is inedible,
he casually declares. If even a little bit of lint sticks to the laundry, he arrogantly thrusts the clothes at me, saying,
"Do it over."
Even though Andrew is the one who tends to make more mess during cleaning, if the room is even slightly dirty, he gets angry and accuses me of slacking off. The challenges aren't limited to just household chores. Andrew doesn't even contribute decently to our living expenses. The reality is, I manage the majority of our living expenses with my salary. While my income is not bad, it's still a bit tight. If I work overtime, I can increase my earnings, but then I won't have the time to do household chores. If the housework falls behind, I end up being scolded by Andrew. I did try talking to him about it, but he didn't bother to listen to what I had to say.
You can live comfortably because you have your own salary, right?
Even though he claims,
I'm saving my share, so don't worry.
I've never seen his salary slip or his savings passbook. I've asked to see them before, but he gets angry and says,
That's an invasion of privacy.
So I had no choice but to give up. To be honest, Andrew's claim about saving money seems suspicious in itself. That's because he spends quite frequently. The bags and watches he wears are branded, and he dresses in expensive clothes. He also buys costly items like bikes and golf bags. It seems like he's relying on my money to fund his hobbies, using his salary selfishly. Andrew's just selfish and not kind to me at all. Relying on someone else's salary to cover rent, food, and all the expenses is just unreasonable. I was deeply disappointed with a married life that was far from my ideal. The word divorce lingered in my mind multiple times, but I couldn't quite bring myself to make a decision. After all, it hasn't been that long since we got married. Maybe I'm not putting in enough effort. Perhaps if I try harder, Andrew will go back to being the kind person he used to be. I held on to that hope and chose to maintain the current situation. Looking back, I realize that this decision was a mistake. Somewhere in my heart, I believed, maybe it's just the kindness of the old Andrew that I miss. However, it turned out it wasn't about money, but merely hiding books. My husband became more domineering as I obediently followed without resistance. His various requests increased, and their nature gradually became more unreasonable. One day, Andrew came home with a gloomy expression. He had mistakenly placed an order for the wrong product at work, causing significant losses. Knowing it's best not to get involved when my husband is in a bad mood, I quietly did household chores while listening to Andrew's complaints. Suddenly, Andrew turned his attention towards me.
It's your fault from the start.
Huh? Why is it my fault? I turned to him in surprise. The things you're talking about have nothing to do with me.
It's because you didn't support me properly. The home environment isn't reassuring, so I've been stressed too. Because of that, I ended up doing such meaningless things.
Andrew's arbitrary words left me speechless. This is clearly taking out frustrations on me, even though I've been putting in so much effort. Why would he express dissatisfaction with that? Though I'm usually silent about it, I finally spoke back to him. Stop blaming me for your work-related mistakes. It's important to separate home and work, right? I understand you're frustrated, but don't take it out on me. In response, instead of reflecting, Andrew exploded at me when I talked back. His face turned bright red and he yelled,
"Shut up!"
while throwing a cup filled with alcohol. Fortunately, the cup didn't hit me, but I couldn't help but tremble. One wrong step, and it could have resulted in a serious injury. Ignoring my fear, my husband continued to hurl insults, shouting,
"Useless woman! Good for nothing. Stop arguing back. Marrying someone like you was a mistake. I'm the husband here. If you're a wife, shut up and serve me obediently. I'll make sure you never defy me again."
Since then, my days have been filled with pressure from him. If something displeased him, he would hurl abusive words. There were times when he would hit or kick me. Even at work, I received threatening messages from Andrew every day like,
"This ugly woman, useless wife, I'll make you suffer when you get home."
This is how he redirected the stress from his job towards me, leaving me unable to find peace at home and, even at work, receiving threatening messages. I became unable to sleep due to the psychological pressure. Days of being scared of Andrew apologizing for anything he said continued. Then one day a major incident occurred. Due to the harsh daily life and lack of sleep, I went shopping half asleep, and while in a daze I ended up on the road and got hit by a car. At that moment, I didn't know what was happening. I just endured the pain in my body. The owner of the car called an ambulance and I was taken to the hospital. There were no life-threatening injuries, but I had a complex fracture in one leg, rendering me unable to walk. I was discharged, but I had to use a wheelchair. According to the doctor, with diligent rehabilitation, I could regain the ability to walk, although it would take time. The owner of the car that hit me repeatedly apologized with a pale face. Feeling sorry for being initially disoriented with a half-asleep state, I couldn't help but feel apologetic. My parents hurriedly came to visit me. At that moment, I hesitated about discussing Andrew's situation, but in the end, couldn't bring myself to say anything. Throughout my hospitalization, Andrew never visited me even once. I would have to lead a restricted life for a while, but if I worked hard, I could eventually walk normally again. So, I was determined to give my best in rehabilitation. That's what I thought. When I returned home, Andrew's cold words were waiting for me.
It's become quite troublesome. Getting involved in an accident? Just how unlucky can you be? You're trying to get me in trouble.
I'm sorry, I was a bit spaced out. The indirect cause of the accident was Andrew in the first place, but I don't have the courage to say so. I just had to bow my head and apologize to him. Andrew continued to question me in a harsh voice.
Can you do household chores with those useless legs of yours?
It might be challenging for a while, but if I work hard on rehabilitation, I might be able to walk a bit eventually. So maybe you could manage dinner on your own.
Impossible.
Huh? Andrew interrupted my words, glared at me, and coldly declared.
I've said it before. I don't want to take care of you for the rest of my life. Divorce is the only option for someone as incapable as you. Get out right now.
Wait a minute. My disability isn't forever. The doctor even said, with rehabilitation, I might be able to walk again.
That's just a possibility, right? There's no way you, with your disability, can endure rigorous rehabilitation. Stop whining and leave already.
Andrew heartlessly uttered those words and forcefully expelled me in a wheelchair out into the heavy snow. Pushed roughly by my husband, I tumbled, wheelchair and all. Panicking, I desperately called out to Andrew. You! Please open the door! I knock on the door with all my strength, but Andrew doesn't respond. What should I do? If it continues like this, I might get hurt. Faced with the unopened door, I felt lost. At that moment, I realized something. You could say my eyes were opened. Why didn't I notice it earlier? With this as impetus, if I get a divorce, I won't have to live with that dreadful person anymore. I don't have to endure verbal abuse or violence anymore. There's not a single trace of affection left for Andrew, who tormented me for so long. I quickly took out my phone from my pocket and called a friend who lives nearby. Despite the sudden call, my friend immediately came to my aid. After being kicked out, I was taken to my parents' house. My parents were surprised when I suddenly returned, but after hearing the circumstances, they were furious. While crying, my mother hugged me, and my father gently patted my head. Overwhelmed by my parents' kindness, I couldn't help but cry. I was happy to see the kindness my parents showed me because I was worried that they might oppose my divorce. Afterward, I hired lawyers, and the divorce was finalized. The end of our married life was surprisingly uneventful. A year had passed since divorcing Andrew, and I was living in peace. I truly felt relieved and enjoyed my days now. However, one day, when I went to the hospital, I encountered Andrew again. No, it was Andrew who said,
Kira?
And approached me. He looked noticeably thin and worn out, compared to before we were married when he dressed sharply in branded clothes. His complexion was pale, his physique was scrawny, his cheeks were chapped. Andrew was surprised to see me.
Kira, have you regained the ability to walk?
Yes, that's right. I worked hard on that rehabilitation you said I couldn't do after our divorce. After the divorce, I diligently underwent rehabilitation and managed to stand up somehow. I still can't run, but I can walk with a cane. Today, as part of my exercise, I walked to the hospital without overdoing it. Even so, I wondered why Andrew approached me. Just seeing his face makes me feel unpleasant. Whether he knew my true feelings or not, Andrew continued the conversation nonchalantly.
Perfect timing. I was just thinking of contacting you. It was really tough after I divorced you.
Without me asking, Andrew started narrating his story. He is currently living alone, relying on convenience store food and eating out excessively. As a result, his health deteriorated and he ended up in the hospital. On top of that, Andrew was forced to quit his job. He used to vent his stress on me on a daily basis, but after the divorce, he couldn't do that anymore, and he got frustrated and took it out on his subordinates and coworkers at work. Due to complaints from those affected and the loss of trust from his colleagues, he ended up being fired from the company.
I regretted deciding on the divorce so easily. I need you. Let's get back together, okay? You also want to come back to me, right?
His audacious request left me amazed. After treating me so badly, why would he think I still have lingering feelings for him? So, I told him this. What a coincidence. I was just about to contact you. Upon hearing this, Andrew's expression brightened. He might have thought we could reconcile, but it's not going to be that easy. Please, don't misunderstand. I was actually considering claiming settlement damages from you.
Huh? Damages?
Andrew seems bewildered, claiming he doesn't understand my words. Ignoring his reaction, I gently smiled and continued speaking. Thank you for that time. You left me with a lower limb disability, and that was a wake-up call.
Huh?
At the time, I was so sick at heart from being hounded by Andrew on a daily basis that I didn't have the energy to run away. But after the divorce, when I calmed down and thought about it, I was hot with anger. I have been treated so badly, and Andrew gets no blame? I don't agree with that. I want him to at least take some responsibility. I kept a diary every day, and I also saved insulting emails from Andrew. Consulting with a lawyer with this evidence revealed that it was sufficient to claim compensation. Upon hearing this, Andrew desperately apologized to me.
Please, spare me at least that much. Right now I'm really struggling to make ends meet. I can't afford any alimony. I'll apologize as many times as you want until you're satisfied.
I scoffed at Andrew's words and decided to say what I wanted to say. Just because you apologized doesn't mean I owe you anything. Before we divorced, even when I apologized while trembling, you still hit and kicked me. So why would you think you'll be forgiven if you apologize?
That's why I want you to know that I'm really sorry about that time.
It's too late. Your apologies don't matter to me. I just want to receive compensation for the suffering I endured. No matter what you say, I will definitely claim alimony. Let's discuss it through the lawyers.
Please, wait, Kira.
Shut up. I don't want to hear it. Get lost, you trash. I left angrily, leaving Andrew behind crying and pleading. I felt very refreshed. Later, through a lawyer, I claimed compensation from Andrew for the mental distress. Realizing that he would lose the lawsuit, Andrew borrowed money and paid me compensation. Now he seems to be living a daily life in debt, chased by debt collectors, but it's clearly his own fault. On the other hand, I am leading a calm life at my parents' house. Thanks to my efforts in rehabilitation, the condition of my legs has greatly improved. If I work a little harder, I will be able to walk without a cane like before. When I was injured in the accident, I lamented the harsh experience. However, if that was the reason I was able to divorce Andrew, it might be a blessing in disguise. I feel like I have regained my true self after the divorce. I'm tired of marriage for a while. In the meantime, I'm going to cultivate a discerning eye for men. I look forward to meeting someone kind this time.